With the first pick in the 2016 NFL Draft, the Los Angeles Rams select Jared Goff, quarterback, California.
All right, welcome back to the NFL Report. James Palmer. We are now joined by Rams General Manager Les Snead. And Les, we didn't play that video because of the pick of Jared Goff. We played that video because of the year. 8 drafts ago was the last time you used a first-round draft pick. How does it feel to finally have one at your, use this year?
You know what? You mentioned before we got on this thing, let's have some fun. So I do think this is going to be a fun draft. We're going to have to work on Thursday night. And then as I played that, I couldn't help but just visualize, punting the ball to Detroit and Jared kind of finishing the game on a few completed passes. So give Jared Goff credit. You know what I mean? You know how it goes it's cool narrative, right? That we draft Jared, we trade Jared, and he wins a playoff game in Detroit for the first time in a million years against his old team. So isn't that a cool narrative? Couldn't write a better narrative.
Really cool narrative.
Unless you're a Ram.
Really cool narrative. I got to ask
right, I was about to say, I can't see you liking that.
That's true. And you're a Ram. So as you want to prove your team, Les, I have to ask you, you have this first-round pick. Are you going to keep that first-round pick?
I just did a press conference with our local media, and they asked me the same question. So here's what I'll say. It's a really, really valuable piece of real estate to have. Whether we pick it 19, I'm not sure. There's so many variables that go into whether we pick at 19, right? Do we move up? Do we move back? And I remember one year we actually in that stretch, that drought, I think you mentioned 8 years, whatever it was. We actually we had the 31st pick in the draft at one time during that stretch, the year after we finished with the silver medal instead of the gold against the New England Patriots in that Super Bowl. But we did trade back into the second round to continue the streak. So it'd be interesting, right? Do we just say, you know what, let's continue the streak for streak's sake? And
boy.
A couple times to the second round.
Yeah, that'll go over well, Les. I mean, the Rams fans will really love that. But look, with the rate of success you guys have had, you know what? I want to rephrase it. I want to get to this because every year we talk about teams trading up to get into that top part of the draft, like you did back in 2016 when you gave up all that freight to move. I think it was from 11 to 1. I'm not quite sure, but I think it was in that ballpark with Tennessee.
It might have been even farther back than that.
What does it take? Like when you're sitting in that seat, like right now, like some teams may be trying to get up into the top 3 this year to get one of these quarterbacks. What type of ingenuity does it take to make a move like that?
Well, I think we were talking about Thomas Dimitroff before we came on the air. I was in Atlanta when Thomas, as GM, made the move from way back to get Julio Jones, right? There was an element of learning some lessons there. Going back to the Jared pick, what's very interesting is to add context to that whole deal. We had spent a lot of years playing really good defense in St. Louis, and then subsequently probably maybe not LA. Then we were moving to LA within. So let's just call it St. Louis. What we had struggled with is continuity at QB. And when I was fortunate enough to get the GM job in St. Louis, Sam Bradford was a QB. He had gone through 2 unfortunate ACL injuries. So now we get to that draft. What's very interesting is, and this is it's sometimes I say it's easy to identify. It's easier maybe to identify, and that's even hard too, right? To identify a college QB who's going to come in and let's call it be your franchise QB. The harder thing to do is to acquire that player, right? So in that year, though, I do know with the Titans, the year before they had done Mariota, Tampa Bay had done Winston. So the Titans were sitting at a spot where you knew they weren't going to draft the QB for the most part. And so recognizing that early of going, you know what? Wow, this could be an opportunity to actually acquire a QB. So we had identified QBs. let's call it Jared, Carson. There was a few others in the draft. And then at that point in time, you're like, wow, maybe we could actually acquire the QB. And then at the combine in Indy, where y'all are at now, is probably the first time John Robinson and I had the conversation on us moving up and the Titans moving back.
Les, you mentioned in Indy, you had that conversation. You're not in Indy right now. You haven't come. What have you learned over the years about the process that works for you guys with the Rams and not coming to the combine?
You know, Steve, I would say this. We value the combine. We probably have a less traditional footprint on the ground at the combine. I can tell you this, Jake Timmy, who kind of runs our analytics, Blake, who's an analyst, they're chomping at the bit to get some of the numbers that are going to come out of Indy. I know with technology today, I know after the position groups work out on Thursday, we will get video of those players into our system. And by Friday afternoon, I'll have a write-up from our scouts, right, on how they thought they did in, let's call it, the non-football drills. So what's interesting, what we felt like for efficiency of time is, especially as we get the coaches involved and we try to come up with a collaborative plan on the draft of who fits, who gives us an edge and things like that. The things with the coaches getting involved so late, with us losing coaches a lot of times right after the season based on success. That's what trying to get in that continuity. Here's what we don't have enough time. What we want to do more is watch more football film, right? And we'll be able to use all the data that comes from the combine, right? We'll chop it up, we'll analyze it, and we'll add it to our process. We'll add it to our decision-making tree, all those things. So I would just say this, it's just a little less traditional footprint there, but Jeff Foster, NFS, they do a great job. We just feel like it's probably more efficient for Sean and I, coaching staff, to be here versus Indy.
But Les, so excuse me, but you see the drills, right? You see the testing and the drills. But what about the in-person? Because a lot of folks, like Andy Reid even said, this is the first time he may get to look at these guys in the eye and kind of get a read on them, but also let them get a read on you. Do you miss any of that, or do you just say we'll pick that up later when we bring them into our building on the personal invite?
What we try to do is the answer would be we don't think we may miss out on it, let's call it this week, right? But it is in terms of 18 minutes. We've done a lot of research. Again, our paradigm's different. We feel like, okay, maybe we, instead of being there just to get 18 minutes with 48 players, it's better served to be here doing some other things. And then we value intangibles, right, immensely. We firmly believe, right, a player's gifted with some physical, let's call it, traits to be able to possibly play football, possibly give the Rams or any team in the NFL an edge. But I always go that the part of that calculus form that's very important is the intangibles that player has. And you blend all that up, and usually talent plus intangibles will probably equal, right, the edge that player can give to us. So we value it well. We just think it's better for us than to, let's call it, sit down with that player somewhere else, somewhere where we have more than just 18 minutes, and somewhere also where the player is not focused. Let's just say this, a player could have 10 interviews in one night. That's pretty exhausting.
True.
So we're able now to maybe go visit that technically rules are really, you go visit that player on his setting, sit down with him for maybe definitely more than 18 minutes. Usually it's up to, somewhere between 3 and 4 hours, and get to know that person there. And also, Steve, and I'm talking a lot, but what it also allows us to do is really digest the vetting we've done, so that we know when we do go sit down and we're playing, there's specific things we're trying to figure out. And guess what? Some players, man, they're A+. I call them marry your daughter type guys. And at that point, we may not even meet them. And there's a strategy there. If we don't meet them, then hey, you and Jesse can't say, "Oh, I heard the Rams are interested in this player," right? Those of us on this side, I get it. Y'all got it. You're on the content business is cool, interesting. Those of us on this side might like to fly a little bit stealthier than that. You know what I mean? Throw a curveball if we can. Which I can tell you this, it's getting really hard to throw curveballs, in this day and time based on the cool thing, right? How popular NFL is, how many people cover it. Y'all are really good at what you do. So, there's also a little bit of that into it too.
That's great. Well, that's what I want to ask you. Like you said, I've never sat in your seat. When you have players that you've hit on late in the draft, that you've been, whether it's Puka Nacua or it's Cooper Kupp or guys, what is the process or the waiting like when you like them, but you don't really know how much you want to reach for them, but you don't want somebody else to snag somebody you really like? These picks that are not near the top of the draft, that there's so many different variables that can happen, but you have guys probably in those rounds you absolutely love, and when you grab them, it probably means the world.
I think if they're having a year like Puka, I'm like, holy cow, we were stupid. Why did we wait to pick him? So that's the first thing that crosses your mind with that. But it is interesting too. Y'all are in Indy, and there is a really good correlation, right, of how you test in Indy and where you get drafted. Now, sometimes that correlation doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be how good a football player you are. So there are times, right, where you could go and, there's a receiver who maybe doesn't run a 40 as fast or things like that, maybe played in the Mountain West thing, and not a Power 5. And you can use that strategy to, let's call it, figure out where that player may fall in the draft. But in Puka's case, we probably should have drafted him earlier. There's music going on. Are y'all cutting me off?
No.
Got what looks like an Eric Weddle look-alike wearing a Georgia Bulldog helmet on the set here.
Well, right now we're looking at Puka Nacua, and he looked a lot better wearing that Rams blue and gold and white than he did wearing that, the underwear Olympics right there. But Les, hey, we're going to let you go. But one thing, I want to give you credit for, I think everybody should. You guys have nailed it with some mid-round, late-round picks, but your coaching staff, as revolving as it is, the consistent development you guys have players is something I think where the Rams have to rate among the top of the league with what your coaching staff does with some of the players that you guys get, regardless of where you find them. So,
well, you're right. We got to work together symbiotically. They got to have a vision for that player, how that player gives us an edge. They've got to be really good at developing them. And also, Steve and Jeff, the one thing I say that's underrated, you got to have the courage to play them, the courage to trust a young player, the courage to go rely on them, because we all know you keep score on Sundays, and you can't, you just don't want to roll anyone out there because you're getting a report card every week.
All right, Les, thank you so much, man. We know you're busy this time of year. You got a first-round draft pick you got to go study some guys for. Let's see if you guys end up.
Let's go.
Will he use it? We don't know.
That's right.
Time will tell.